Finding the perfect piece of land for your homestead is tough enough, but when it comes to contracts, many people unknowingly make mistakes that can cost them their dreams. Although you might think that a contract is simple, the truth is that without knowing what's required to make a contract, you may actually be signing a voided contract. Leaving something out as simple as governing law or a dispute resolution requirements could lead to a nightmare when trying to enforce it. A legal contract is essentially a promise that the law will back up. It's like when you agree to hay to your neighbor and they agree to pay you like 50 bucks, then, it's a simple contract, but it is a contract nonetheless. It's important to understand the types of contracts you're entering into so that you know what requirements you need to meet in order to make it enforceable. In a contract, there are a few key elements that need to be present. First, there's an offer, then acceptance, and finally consideration. The consideration can be something as simple as $50 to your neighbor to pay for some hay. There are three types of contracts that you should be aware of because these are the types of agreements that will be common for you as a homesteader. For example, the first is a verbal contract. We enter into these types of agreements more often than not. It's important then when entering into one of these agreements that you have evidence of an agreement. Under the federal rules of evidence, you can use electronic communications, such as text and email. All that is required is that the electronic communication have a date and timestamp. So you can use something as simple as text to outline the basics of a deal. The second is implied contracts. This could be something as simple as asking to borrow $20. The implication is that the borrower will unconditionally return the $20 at a future date. Again, you can use technology to your benefit by using something as simple as a wire transfer or digital message acknowledging receipt of funds. That way you have some form of record with it. The third is expressed or written agreements. When dealing with these types of contracts, it is important that you read them. You are looking for certain questions to be answered, such as what is the governing law, so you know which jurisdiction you'll need to sue in. You also want detailed terms and conditions. This gives you in detail what is and isn't expected of you. You'll also want to know what the dispute process is, including how to make changes to the agreement. Finally, you'll want to see if there are any addendums or additions to the contract that are outside of the template they're using to generate your written agreement, because most of these companies are just using generated templates. I've heard stories of homesteaders who've gotten into trouble because they relied on verbal agreements, like the time a group of neighbors agreed to share a water well, but things went sour because there was no written contract in place. It's a great example of why writing it down matters. You need to have some evidence of the details. The homesteading movement has grown exponentially in recent years, with more and more people seeking a simpler, more sustainable way of life. As the movement grows, so does the need for legal security in land acquisition and use, and just in your everyday life. For many homesteaders, securing the right piece of land is just the beginning. Once you've got the land, you've got to navigate the complexities of contracts and agreements. Although you don't think there's an official agreement in place, there are a few things that make a simple purchase at a register a contract. When you're shopping around the store and you're looking at price tags, those are considered offers. Once someone makes an offer, you have the right to counter offer even at the register. You've picked up the item and put it in your cart, showing evidence that you're intending to contract with the merchant. Although today we call it theft, we could also call someone trying to leave without fulfilling their end of the contract a breach of contract. Once you're at the register, you legally have the right to negotiate down your price. Yes, that's true. But this isn't practiced anymore, although the law does recognize your right to do this all the way up until payment. Once you've fulfilled your end of the agreement by rendering payment, the contract is fulfilled and you have a receipt as evidence of the facts. As the homesteading movement continues to grow, it's becoming increasingly important for homesteaders to understand the importance of legal contracts. The homesteading lifestyle is all about being self-sufficient, but that doesn't mean that you have to go it alone. Having a solid contract in place can protect you and your business from potential pitfalls. Creating a contract for homesteading starts with knowing your goal. What do you want to achieve? Are you buying land, selling firewood, or hiring to help for fencing? Write down who does what. Don't trust a handshake. When it comes to creating contracts, you've got to think about the must have terms. Who are the parties involved? What are the deliverables? What's the payment plan? Are you dealing with cash or are you dealing in barter? For homesteaders, there are some unique considerations that need to be taken into account. You might want to add terms like pasture access or no chemicals near my creek, although you need to define where near your creek means. Although it's important to understand certain terms, you can also define your own terms as needed. An example would look something like this. This partnership agreement hereinafter agreement shall be entered into. So we are now changing it from partnership agreement into agreement, therefore creating that as the definition. There are some important terms that you can't escape, such as the difference between shall and may. But the key to creating a solid contract is to keep it simple. Use plain language that everyone can understand instead of using legal jargon. Just say what you mean. You get 10 chickens, I get $100 by Friday. But you also need to include what it is that you are not getting as well. So, for example, if you don't pay me by Friday, what are my repercussions? What is my right of recourse? And this is really why dispute resolution is so important. You can write this down and say, hey, I'll give you 10 chickens, you give me $100. But then you go to court and they're like, well, there was no set date. And they could argue that. It's like, hey, he could pay the $100 whenever. You have people that can sit there and argue, oh, by Friday, which Friday? By Monday, which Monday? Okay, so the thing is you have to be a lot more specific, not only on the dates and times and stuff that you use, but you should also consider entering in some language into the contract of this is what's going to happen if you don't follow through. I'm going to lien and levy everything you have until I can sell what you have to be able to give me the value. Well, now all of a sudden the person goes, oh, wait, do I want a contract? Because if he decides he doesn't want to, that's because he doesn't trust whether or not he can pay. Because that only happens if he can't pay. I once helped somebody with a family dispute after the passing of their mother. My friend was considered the executor of the estate as the firstborn son according to probate law. His sister was trying to sell the house thinking there would be no consequences. Although I used some simple language throughout the letter using key terms such as this may result in criminal charges and you shall not sell any items in the estate without written permission. The reason why these two simple words are important is because shall is a command, whereas may is vague. You may have won the lottery, but did you actually win the lottery? Even the Bible says, thou shalt not kill. It does not say you may not kill. Okay? So remember, I've built a simple contract for homesteaders to use as a template for any of your written agreements over in my Patreon shop. Grab it later and you'll be able to skip through a lot of this guesswork. Managing your homesteading contracts is just as important as creating them. You've got to track your duties and make sure everyone's on the same page. When it comes to tracking duties, a notebook or a phone app can be your best friend. Just log who owes what, neighbor delivers hay by March 1, and you'll be able to stay on top of things. And that way you've got some sort of what's called prima facie evidence. So sometimes a quick call or a visit can clear up any misunderstandings. Hey, confirming you're dropping off that lumber tomorrow. It's a simple thing, but it can save you a lot of headaches. And I even get a reminder from Stephanie about my property payment every month. I like it because, in case I'm busy, it's just a reminder, and I don't find it annoying. I actually appreciate it. And I know a homesteader who saved a barter deal by having a quick chat with their neighbor. It's a great example of how communications can make all the difference. Things don't always go as planned, so it's essential to plan for adjusting your contract if things change. Maybe the harvest fails or a buyer delays payment. Whatever the situation, you can tweak the contract to reflect the new reality. And this is where the part of addendums come in, but you would learn this in my collection of contracting in everyday life over on Patreon. So let's say that you agreed to swap goats for labor, but the cash ran dry. You can update the contract to reflect the new terms. Just make sure to get it in writing and have both parties sign off on it, whether it be electronically or through written means. This is a purpose and use of addendums. Okay, so enforcing a homesteading contract can be a challenge, but it's essential to protect your business. The first step is to spot trouble and tailor your agreement to reflect those possibilities, including dispute resolution. Maybe the buyer hasn't paid for your honey, or they've fenced off your shared path. What does the contract say about enforcing this? And what are your options? And when trouble does arise, the first move is to talk it out, but make sure to write it down: date, time, what they said. It's essential to keep a record of everything, because this will be used as evidence should there be a legal dispute in the courtroom. One lesson I learned a long time ago is that the Bible can be looked at as a guidebook for commerce. If you have a problem, go to your brother. If you can't resolve it, bring a witness. If that still doesn't resolve it, take it to the church, i.e. the courts. This is a great guide about how to create and enforce contracts and disputes. If talking it out doesn't work, you may need to escalate the situation. You might need to bring in a local mediator or take it to small claims court, maybe even get yourself a lawyer. But you are able to take care of most of the process on your own, because you're learning how to create, manage, and enforce your contracts. So remember to keep proof of everything: photos of delivered goods, texts, anything that can support your case. I know a homesteader who won $500 for undelivered firewood because they kept a record of everything. Sometimes you may need to lawyer up. It's not always necessary, but for big stakes, it's essential. Just weigh the cost, $500 to $2,000 against the potential benefit. I've heard stories of homesteaders who've lost thousands of dollars because they relied on verbal agreements without, proper documentation to back it up. It is a harsh reality, but it's a great example of why written contracts are essential, or at least some sort of evidence that you have entered into an agreement, whether it be an email, a text message, which are considered digital signatures. All these different things you do have at your disposal in the digital age. So there's no reason why you should have no evidence of an agreement, what the terms and conditions are, what it is that you're going to do, what it is that they're going to do, how much is going to get paid, what happens if somebody defaults, how do you resolve disputes, how do you resolve different things. This works across the board, whether you're selling something for a later payment or you are entering into a partnership agreement. It's all the same. It's just the circumstances or the environment has changed. According to a recent survey, over 50% of homesteaders have had a contract dispute at some point. It's a staggering statistic, but highlights the importance of getting things in writing. So most people think they'll either hire a lawyer or it won't happen to them. Sadly, these are the people who are most likely to need this knowledge. Think of it this way: if I can prey on your ignorance for my own benefit, what's preventing me? Lack of knowledge of these essential elements could cost you more than you're willing to pay. Some people might say that verbal agreements are enough and that a handshake is good as a written contract. But look at the integrity of the people in society today. The reality is that verbal agreements are often misunderstood, and they can leave you open to exploitation. So my next question is, would $20 be too much to pay to have this knowledge? If you think that's a great price, you should come over to my Patreon shop and sign up for the Contracting in Everyday Life collection, where I will teach you the basic ins and outs of creating custom agreements and enforcing them in any situation. Create contracts to protect your work, manage them to stay on track, and enforce them to keep what's yours. That's the key to successful homesteading and understanding how to deal with the everyday contracting that you do as you go along. Grab my Homesteaders contract collection and template over in my Patreon shop, which can be found in the description. Tell me your contract wins and or your woes in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories of any of you guys who have had to practice this in your own life. So remember, a solid contract is the best way to protect your business and to protect your homestead. So don't wait, start creating contracts today, and start saving yourself not only some money, but start saving yourself some headache, because when you have control of the situation, you're going to feel a lot better than leaving it on somebody else's. So don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Thanks for being here. See you in the next video.